Hello and welcome to this special edition of Across the Balkans from Bled, Slovenia. I'm Nafisa Latic. Great to have you with us. As Slovenia takes on its first ever presidency of the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member, it vowed to focus on pressuring the international community to condemn and prevent Israel's actions in Gaza. In June, Slovenia joined several other EU countries and recognized the state of Palestine. It has also positioned itself as one of the EU's most outspoken advocates for a peace in the Middle East. The country has been actively calling on the international community to help end the conflict in Gaza, reflecting its growing role on the global stage. At the Bled Strategic Forum, I had the opportunity to sit down with Slovenia's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tanja Fajon, and I've asked her about her country's next steps when it comes to reaching a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Minister Fajon, welcome to Across the Balkans.
Thank you.
And thank you for this lovely setting. I don't think we ever had a nicer background on the show.
That means you have to come more often to Slovenia.
Most definitely. Let me start by congratulating you on the first presidency of the UN Security Council as a non-permanent member. What will be your main focus in the next months? I know you already said you've prepared, you and your team, you prepared for this turn in office.
Yes, thank you. We are now 8 months non-permanent member of a Security Council, and with 1st of September we took over the presidency. Our country is preparing really intensively, and our diplomats for this month that is also a high-level week. I mean, we are living in a world of different realities, or parallel realities, and we are living in a world with many armed conflicts. So more than 55 armed conflicts. We see the highest number of civilian innocent deaths, also the highest number of deaths among humanitarian workers, and countries that are not respecting the international law and the UN Charter. So it is a very challenging task, our presidency, but we do plan in a high-level week to focus on major conflicts. Of course, there is for us Russian aggression in Ukraine, in direct neighborhood that affects us all, in between a terrible, dire humanitarian situation with the war in Gaza, so the Middle East conflict, then Sudan. So we really try to be an honest broker, so address different conflicts and see where does multilateralism stands today, what is the role of Security Council, how to bridge the gaps we have in the Security Council, and find political solutions to the military conflicts. And I hope that we can at least confront different positions and sincerely discuss how to make the Security Council and the UN more efficient in ending what is the mission itself, to end the conflicts and provide peace and security to our citizens.
I've listened to your speech while opening Bled Strategic Conference. First of all, congratulations, so many EU leaders, EU officials here showing how Slovenia is important when it comes to EU's foreign policy. But you focused on the war in Gaza. You've called on the international community to do more, and we know the EU has not been united on the issue. What was your main goal with that speech, and what was your message to them, as they were mostly present in the room?
Call on a responsibility, common responsibility, and also a respect of international law. I mean, just looking to the situation in Gaza and the situation in the Middle East, we had at least 4 resolutions since the October 7 and horrible Hamas attack on Israeli civilians, and 4 resolutions calling for an immediate ceasefire, a protection of civilians, additional humanitarian assistance, and implementation of two-state solution. And none of the resolutions are respected by one side, at least by Israeli government. And what we need to do is definitely to use all the leverage possible to first get the ceasefire, the agreement. There are negotiations, but we see that the situation on the ground is getting worse. The Israeli government doesn't recognize the existence of a Palestinian state, so Slovenia is calling our international partners to follow in the recognition of Palestine as a sovereign and independent state, and at the same time work for a solution on the ground, protect civilians. It's one positive development the humanitarian poses for vaccination of children against the polio, but we are very concerned. We are very concerned seeing the terrible attacks, expand of military operation from Israeli in West Bank, continuation of illegal settlements, and someone will have, with the Netanyahu government, also pay the accountability for that at some point to first to their society that also wants to see peace.
Does that mean that Slovenian government cannot support the government in Tel Aviv if it continues not respecting the international law and not abide by the UN resolutions and as well as ICC resolutions?
We are certainly condemning the acts of Israeli government. Recently I also supported sanctions against the leaders that are violating the international law. But of course the dialogue is needed, and our decision on the recognition of Palestine and was not hostile to Israeli population. I mean, it was a message we want to, it's the only guarantee for a safety future of safety of Israelis and Palestinians living side by side. This is our ultimate goal, what we want to achieve. So we'll continue working absolutely with both sides. We need serious engagement also and the discussions about the further political architecture. I do remember months ago we were discussing about a peace conference, the ideal situation, everyone at the table, including Israeli, US and the others interlocutors. But we don't see that to be realized. So we can work only with those that are willing to talk. So we are talking with our Arab partners. We are engaged in finding political solutions. We will, during the week in UN, I will host a session with Arab League, closed door session. We will have next Friday in Madrid session with EU like-minded countries and also Arab partners. So there is a lot of diplomacy ongoing, but we would need everyone at the table, and this is not the case.
It's certainly not the case, as the ceasefire talk seems to be paused, or I don't even think that us journalists know exact term how to phrase it, on which stage they are at the moment. But I do want to ask you about your government's decision to recognize Palestine this year, as well as several other EU countries. How significant is this, based on your experience, for Palestine to achieve its political goals on the global stage and negotiate for its independence?
I think it's extremely important. On one hand, we send a message of hope to Palestinians, but also in the DNA of a Slovene nation is every nation has a right to its self-determination. So I was twice in Tel Aviv before Slovenia decided for recognition, trying to get some positive reaction, to see whether we can count on a ceasefire, on a discussion about two-state solution, on a seriousness of any engagement. And when we realized that there is a big absence of the wish to, or the willingness to have a Palestinian state on the other side, I think we strongly believe that if we put Palestinians, finally, I think we should have done that much earlier, on an equal footing and recognize them as state, we would give them also a chance to negotiate on an equal basis. We would like to encourage Palestinian Authority to reform, to modernize, to be from West Bank, Ramallah, capable of controlling also Gaza, to be empowered and to carry out with the reforms. And we'll continue doing so. So we'll continue doing so because the ceasefire currently is more than urgent.
You mentioned partners in achieving the same goals. You've met with Turkish foreign minister recently. He was here in Slovenia on, I think, first official visit since becoming foreign minister. Turkey welcomes your efforts, supports efforts by Slovenia to spread this message across the EU. What else did you agree with Minister Fidan? And are there things that the two countries can do jointly to facilitate the talks in Gaza?
It's extremely important that we have exchange of views, and I was very glad to host Turkish foreign minister, a colleague, a friend Fidan in Ljubljana. Of course, one thing is strengthening bilateral relations, which both sides really are very much in favor of doing it. But we need to address these challenges that we have in the region, and Turkey is really very much engaged with humanitarian assistance, and I really welcome the efforts that Turkey is doing in the Middle East. So the knowledge and the experience is valuable for us to understand how to best move forward, and we'll discuss further. And we agreed that we need implementation of two-state solution as the only guarantee for peace and stability in the region. But what is, as I said before, most urgent is to use all possible pressure of international community for a ceasefire and the agreement on a release of hostages and additional humanitarian assistance that would really reach people on the ground, because the situation what we observe, it's so many civilians, more than 40,000, and many children and women being killed, and diseases spread, and lack of clean water, lack of medicaments. It's something that we all have to feel responsible.
Especially for us, Minister Fajon, here in the region, as we know what happened in the 90s, particularly in Bosnia, and all the atrocities that led to genocide afterwards, that the UN Security Resolution passed this year as well on Srebrenica genocide. Based on our experiences when it comes to the reconciliation, when it comes to the role of international community, I guess us here, we understand even better the role of global community and the leaders like yourself, Minister Fidan, and other important countries, important players to raise their voices while those children are dying, as you were mentioning.
I mean, Slovenia have, as you mentioned, our own experience of bloody wars 30 years ago with the fall apart of Yugoslavia. Of course, these are extremely difficult issues to overcome with the reconciliation, with the cooperation, with compromises that are very heavy among the countries that were in war. These are complex issues. They need a lot of wisdom among political elites, if I say so, but also in our societies to have understanding. Last evening there was a really very touchy concert here in Bled, when we put together musicians from both sides, from Palestinian and Israeli side, and they played together. It was a very emotional get-together with artists that also express their feelings. How does it feel to live in a region that is in a armed conflict, not knowing really each other, not really talking to each other, and that was also our experience. The wars are putting very high barriers in our heads, in our societies, and it takes time to overcome, but it takes also a lot of strength and wisdom. And at first we have only the oldest organization is United Nations, that was built upon a war of the Second World War. So how to make countries understand that we have only international law that is above everything and can only prevent the conflicts further.
Staying in the region, your country as an EU member as well as Croatia, yesterday Ursula von der Leyen called them a very good partners for other countries, like my own country, Bosnia and Herzegovina, that is still in the process of joining the bloc. I want to talk about the EU strategy towards enlargement. The message from Brussels is clear. We need to enlarge the Balkans. It's our focus. But these messages we heard so many times. in this part of the world. In the wake of the war in Ukraine, how significant is that the EU finally takes action?
There is a very strong awareness as a consequence of Russian aggression in Ukraine that we need a very strong, united Europe or enlarged European Union. So the discussion on enlargement to the Western Balkans is much more present as ever before. I just this morning hosted a meeting with all the foreign ministers of the Western Balkans together with special envoys and Miroslav Lajčák. And it was a very good discussion. What you could realize, there is a very strong motivation. Yes, we want to move forward. We need each other in a very geopolitical complex environment. It's also geopolitical necessity, a momentum. Let's grab it and make this necessary reform on one hand, on the side of EU and also on the side of the accession countries. It's not only the Western Balkans. We speak for the last 20 years. Today it's a new reality with the Ukraine and Moldova. But Slovenia is a very strong supporter of the enlargement, and it's for our region what we see. Bosnia and Herzegovina you mentioned. If Bosnia and Herzegovina will not move towards the EU, there will be no country in the future because young people are leaving. They don't have any vision. The reforms are necessary. The EU path is really something that can substantially help to the countries. We are supportive to the economic growth plan that is now a novelty, also gradual integration to the common market. There are steps we can do. We need commitment and engagement from both sides, but honestly, I believe it is the time. And quite a lot of governments are aware that if we don't grab this time, there might not be another time, because the region of the Western Balkans became, in a way, also a playground for different geopolitical interests, but the countries have always been part of Europe, and they are part of Europe.
Speaking of enlargement, I have to bring in Turkey here. Has this been discussed with Minister Fidan, and is Slovenia willing to be a partner to Ankara in order to go back to our accession talks and speed up the process?
We have discussed with Mr. Fidan about the enlargement. And there is, of course, an open debate, and Turkey is now openly, at least the ministers, saying we want to be part of the enlargement together with the Western Balkans. We want to move ahead with the accession talks. I would say one thing that the awareness is there, Turkey is a very strategic partner for European Union. We need each other, and we need to engage in this dialogue on the principles of the values, like also human rights and all the criteria that are there. But we need each other. We are very close partners, and one day or later, I mean, everyone is searching its own alliances. So being part of Europe means that you have to build on the relations and build on these alliances. So if you don't do that, then everyone can shift somewhere else, and then it's another question where our future goes.
And just at the end, I want to touch upon the significance of Bled Strategic Forum and this beautiful touristy place who has become a hub for hard talks and discussions in the last couple of days. I mean, you can see tourists on one side, and on the other side, politicians arguing about different matters, not just about the Balkans, but other European issues. How significant is having a forum like this for Slovenia? Located here in the heart of Europe. You can say somehow even the bridge between the Western Balkans and, although we don't like that expression, Western Balkans, let's just say Balkan countries and the rest of the Europe.
I can proudly say that Bled Strategic Forum, it was the 19th edition this year. Next year will be 20 years, so jubileum. It really grew to a quite big regional event, and it brings together participants from all the continents of the world. So it's not only addressing the regional issues, but it's addressing very complex issues like was this year the world of parallel realities. And maybe this beautiful setting, we had this year more than 2,500 participants, 180 panelists from almost 50 countries from the world. Maybe this beautiful environment also gives a chance for a good networking, maybe some positive, discussions.
But be honest, was it challenging?
Sunny weather.
was it challenging, having in mind all these things we previously discussed? Was it challenging to organize this forum this year?
And I can say that I can be just grateful for the team. We had an amazing number of young people, volunteers, that helped us, and it was also great to see many young activists that were participating at the Youth Bled Strategic Forum and sharing their ideas and vision, and we really try to involve them and engage them as much as possible. It is a challenge also for Bled, as it's a tourist time. We have a lot of tourists here, but on the other hand, it's also a possibility and a great chance for Slovenia for a promotion. So I do hope that all our guests that were here will take a best image of Slovenia back at their homes, because we really tried to be a very good host and organizer.
And maybe come back with their families and friends. I will most certainly come back again. Minister Fajon, I want to thank you for inviting TRT World this year on the conference and for this interview, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.